Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Penang Institute for the talk. Today, right, we are very happy to have Dr. Nasha Roziadi Kaur to talk about international trades 1,000 years ago. Currently, we are facing problem with international trades. Maybe we will be able to seek comfort from the past, historical past. Dr. Nasha Roziadi Kaur is an associate professor and deputy director of the Center for Global Archaeological Research at USM. He specializes in the fields of epigraphy, paleographies, and historical archaeology. Current research interests focus on the early historic coastal polities of Malay Peninsula. His work on ancient Kedah challenges conventional narrative, emphasizing the region's complex maritime networks and multicultural dynamism. He completed his PhD at the University of Peshawar, focusing on the Gandhara civilization. Dr. Nasha has led major excavation, including at Bukit Choras, like last year, the Buddha statue that he discovered actually surprised the nation. Yeah. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Nasha.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to extend my utmost gratitude to Penang Institute for organizing this lovely event. And this is very important for us to engage with the public and to communicate our recent interpretations and findings on ancient Kedah. And I see Matt Benson and Hanani from Pin City is also here. And Matt, you made all of this possible. Okay, you supported our project initiatives. You supported our community engagement programs, the publication of this book, and also the excavation, the third phase of excavation, which led to the discovery of the Buddha statue. So thank you so much, Pin City. So for today, I am going to give some discussions regarding the content of this book, okay, regarding the research findings which led to formation of a new narratives on Malaysian history and how the national will. The Sultanate of Malacca had been the center stage of the Malaysian historiography. Okay, although the Sultanate of Malacca only had 100 years of history as compared to ancient Kedah, which had 1,000 years of history. How come Sultanate of Malacca had been given that much of attention due to Maritime? So researchers were able to triangulate these different sources and able to construct narratives regarding the social history of Malacca, the court custom, the list of nobilities, the list of kings, etc. What not to tell about the history of Malacca. So although Malacca only had 100 years of history, then they can be able to construct lots of narratives on that history, and they used Malacca as the peak of achievement for Malay history. But as for ancient Kedah, in those days, archaeological research were piecemeal research. Researchers conducted research on several archaeological sites, but the data had not been integrated into a single body of knowledge. The archaeological data had not been properly contextualized with historical records, so not much is known about the history of ancient Kedah, aside from there were several chappies, there were several temples, that's all. But things started to change after the year 2008 when we started to employ new approach in archaeological research. We call it the post-processualism research. We don't want to use archaeological data to construct the history of Kedah, but we use other forms of data also. We study paleo-environmental data. We study historical data, contextualize the data with regional context. So in this way, we are able to produce a more robust interpretation regarding the history of ancient Kedah and how to contextualize the history with the development of the region between the second and third centuries. So for today, am going to describe the kind of archaeological discovery that we have in the Bujang Valley, the kind of approach that we have, and what is the new narratives that we are offering to the public as we wrote inside our book. Kedah Tua, Ancient Kedah History, Archaeology, and New Narratives. Now, everything started in the year 2017 when I came back from Pakistan to Malaysia as a senior lecturer, and I was looking for an archaeological site to study. Okay, in those days, much focus was given to the areas of the Sungai Batu complex, Kampung Sungai Mas, and Kampung Bujang. Of Bujang Valley, everyone kind of already took the importance. So I was looking for a site where nobody wanted to study actually. So there is this single site located to the north of Gunung Jerai on top of Bukit Choras. Okay, and the site did not look very impressive when we first visited the area. It looked like a big mound with several broken bricks. And by looking at that mound, you wouldn't be too motivated to conduct an excavation there. It doesn't look very good. And it doesn't look very, it appears that there was nothing there. Okay, so we conducted our geophysical survey. And during our geophysical survey, we detected something buried underneath the mound, something solid. Okay. And the first research was funded by the Ministry of Economy just for the survey. And in 2022, we received another round of funding and we were allowed to conduct an excavation there. As we excavated, we had unveiled a well-preserved Buddhist temple. This temple shows an intricate form of architecture not seen before in other archaeological sites in the Bujang Valley. And it became a big surprise for us. And in September 2023, we had a press conference announcing the findings. And during that time, we discovered 2 statues, but the statues were not complete. It was just half a statue. We didn't find any head or anything. However, in May 2024, last year, we opened the northern part of the temple. Okay, you can see over here, there is a stick, and this is actually a chamber. Okay, this is actually a chamber, and in May 2024, we started digging into the chamber. As we went deeper, we noticed something, and we saw the kneecap. We had to stop our excavation after that because the money ran out. And then Matt Benson came to our rescue and gave us a little bit of funding, to show his stuff and action in a more material form. And we conducted excavation. We slowly dig into the chamber and we discovered this. This is one of the most, I think this is the best Buddhist statue ever to be discovered in Bujang Valley. It's the only life-size statue, a complete one, it's preserved in its original position. It was not disturbed at all. It is as if in the 14th century CE, the temple was simply left and nobody touched that area. So there's no such thing as iconoclasm in the church. People simply, maybe after they converted to Muslim Islam, they simply left the temple without destroying it. Okay, and we can see the facial expression, the drapery, the position, everything, and this enables us to have a robust interpretation regarding the cultural aspect of the Bujang. And with this discovery, we wanted to form a new narrative regarding the history of ancient Kedah. And if I want to summarize the history of ancient Kedah into 3 words, that's only 3 words. Number 1, interconnectivity. Number 2, multiculturalism. And number 3, continuity. So these are the 3 main themes that we are focusing in our book. And I'm going to explain the kind of findings that we have. Now, in Malaysia, a very long history, tracing back to the prehistory, maybe 100 or 200,000 years ago, going into the proto-history period when we had Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms, going into the early history period when we had the Sultanate of Malacca, into the modern period, when we had the colonial period, and then into post-modern period today. But the period of our interest is the proto-history period. which is between the 2nd to the 13th century CE. It is the period when there was some regional interconnectivity in the area, when the Chinese and Indian traders started to go into the Malay archipelago, when the economic spillover and cultural transfer had led to the development of cultural complexity in the region of Southeast Asia. And one of the many polities which developed in the area after the 2nd century CE is ancient Kedah. So there were 4 groups of researchers. Number one, we have the antiquarians. So the antiquarians, they conducted research between the 1850s until the year 1937. So these people, they were colonial officers and they were looking for traders to decorate their museums and houses. So they discovered quite a number of artifacts, but not in Malaysia now. And then from 1937 to 1970s, we have researchers who followed the culture and history method. They tried to describe the artifacts in the Bujang Valley from the cultural point of view. You know, from this form of art, that form of art, but they didn't try to really construct the history. And then we have the processualist archaeologists, where they started to conduct research as a scientific research, but didn't conceptualize the data based on the original consideration. And then we have the post-processualists, which is us now, understand right now. We conducted archaeological research, we conducted scientific analysis, but we contextualized our findings with other historical figures, looking at highly environmental data, by looking at regional development. So we use all methods and we call it the interpretive archaeology. We look at human agency at the main point of departure for our argument. Okay? Now, so we see the emergence of complex societies in the Malay archipelago happened somewhere in the 4th century BC. That is the earliest. And that is based on the discovery that we have in the site of Khao Zeng Hill, Khao Tong, and Khao Sek. Somewhere near the Kedah Isthmus, we discovered quite a number of seals coming from the Han Dynasty. We discovered Mauryan inscriptions over there. So it shows that by the 4th century BC, we have traders from India, China, coming into the region through the sea route. Okay, at that time, the sea route did not really pass through the Strait of Malacca, but they used the Kedah Isthmus. However, a big change happened in the 2nd century CE. 2nd century BC until the 2nd century CE, we saw the rise of the Han Dynasty. At the same time, we saw also the rise of the Kalinga Empire in the period. So these two powers, what happened? They started. They had this very good political system. They managed to unify the country. They were able to create political stability and economic development. And with economic development, there was industrialization. And with industrialization, they had surplus of commodity. And with the surplus of commodity, you trade with one another. Now, what happened? Before the 2nd century BC, most of the trade items were ornaments. They were small items, and the small items can be carried overland using the Kedah Isthmus. So they can publish the ship in the west coast, carry over the material, go to the east coast, and then they can go on with the ship. So those are smaller materials. So they are ornaments, beads, small stuff. However, after the 2nd century BC, they started to produce bigger objects, heavier objects, metal, iron, when they have the bronze and iron objects, they have ceramics, and due to logistic methods, logistic issues, they were no longer able to use Kedah Isthmus. That's why I don't think that the language project is. So after the 2nd century BC, the traders, they started to use the Strait of Malacca as the main trade route. And that is when we see the emergence of politics along the coastal areas. So we see the movement of goods people had led to the emergence of network of coastal and riverine trade outposts. And the presence of the riverine trade outposts had led to the inflow of commodities. The inflow of commodities had led to social change, the process, cultural transfer, technological transfer, urbanization. transformed coastal communities into polities. And as a result, we see this. Okay, by the 2nd century AD, we saw the emergence of several coastal kingdoms. I wouldn't call them kingdoms, I would call them polities. So we have in here ancient Kedah, okay, where we discovered lots of coastal settlements along the west coast of the entire Malay Peninsula. And over here in Pahang, the kingdom of Langkasuka, where we discovered quite a number of these surroundings sites. Over here in northern Sumatra, we have the kingdom of Lamuri. We discovered also similar findings, beads, structures. We have Kota Chinang, Paros, Jambi, Palembang, and Santubong. Okay, so these are all the coastal communities which evolved into polities due to the economic spillover from India and China, due to the increase of cultural complexity caused by the technology transfer and cultural exchange because of the inter-regional trade. Now, ancient Kedah is one of the many polities which exist in the area from the 2nd to the 14th CE. How do we know about the pattern of ancient Kedah? Based on the archaeological remains that we have in the Bujang Valley. Okay? Now, based on the archaeological discoveries, research had been done in the area since the year 1980s until today, but there are generally three main hypotheses on ancient Kedah. Okay, number one, we call the colonization hypothesis. Number two, called the indigenization hypothesis, and number three, we call it the local autonomy hypothesis. So there are three schools of thought regarding the history of Kedah. The colonization hypothesis stated that the people of ancient Kedah were purely Indianized. So they followed Indian culture 100%. So there is no difference between people in Kedah with the people of India. No difference at all. This theory was proposed by Farid Will. I mean, he's from the Greater Indian Society and supported by several other scholars like R.C. Majumdar and Dinakan Sastry. Okay, so first theory. Number two, we have the indigenization hypothesis. This was suggested by LSM and supported by Datuk Hassan Suhaimi and currently being held by UKM right now. So this theory equates the development of ancient Kedah with the societies in Java, and so they were local people who accept different aspects of Indian culture and incorporated the Indian form of culture into Indian culture. So we call it the indigenization. And the third hypothesis is we call it the local autonomy hypothesis, where it's stated that the archaeological findings, the Hindu and Buddhist sites in the Bujang Valley were made traders, and the local people, they were not Indianized at all. Okay, and this theory was suggested by the J.S. Allen, supported by Michel Jacques Haycock, and used to be supported by me, but under actually. Okay, so there are three main theories: the colonization hypothesis, the people in Kedah 100% Indianized. The indigenization hypothesis, the people of ancient Kedah partially Indianized. The local autonomy hypothesis, so there are three hypotheses. So what is USM hypothesis? Let us have a look at the archaeological findings first. Now, what is the Bujang Valley? Okay, this is the Bujang Valley. So the archaeological sites in Bujang Valley are mostly located to the south of Gunung Jerai. This is Gunung Jerai, and the red dots are the military sites, and the yellow dots are the economic centers, where the red dots are the sites of temples, and the yellow dots, they are exchange sites and industrial sites. Okay, so we can see over here, and then we have Bukit Choras, located to the north, the side, just by itself over here. Okay, so this is the distribution of the sites in the. Okay, so we have everything concentrated to the south of the Jerai, and one isolated site over here, and another isolated site located in Shokun, in Bukit Tajam. Okay, in the description. So based on the discovery of this archaeological site, they become the point of departure for all of the minds on the history of ancient Kedah. Now, the first type of discovery, we have the Hindu statues. Okay, so we have statues made of clay. So this is a Ganesh statue made of clay. This is made of granite. So we have three Ganesh statues. This is Bujang Mahishasura. This is the head of a Nandi. This is Hypothetica. It is a representation of the god Vishnu, Avatara. Okay. So these are the statues that we have, so Hindu statues, and it appears that the type of granite used is not local granite. We call this medium grain granite. They are not local. It have been imported. It could have been, but we need to study some of this. We also discovered quite a number of pedestals. We have lingas. This particular linga is made of type of granite which is not local. In Bujang Valley, it's not local, and the granites here are not local. Okay. We also discovered quite a number of inscriptions, and the inscriptions are written in different scripts. Okay, we have the older ones are written in the Brahmi script from 5th to 6th century CE, showing Southern Indian influence. But we also discovered inscriptions written in old Japanese script. Okay, the calligraphy is similar to those referred to the Bodo 9th to 10th century CE. Okay, so it is a mixture of everything. We have the Indian inscriptions and we have the Japanese inscription. We also discovered Arab inscriptions. Okay, so it appears that it is not just Indian influence, we also have Japanese influence. Okay? And looking at the temples, okay, there is no such thing as Kedah architecture, and it appears that different temples show different forms of architecture. It appears to have been built by different of people with different types of budget, different types of descriptions. So there's no regularity in terms of the architectural features, the temples that we have in Bujang Valley. Each temple would represent the form of architecture of a single community, probably coming from different parts. So, okay. These are the temples which were excavated during the time of H.G. College Wales in the year 1937. Unfortunately, most of them are already destroyed. After the excavation, they simply left. No post-excavation excavation, so nothing is left. And the most important discoveries that we have in the Bukit Choras are the trade maps. Okay, this is the main indicator of the trade volumes that we have in the Bujang Valley. So firstly, the most important ceramics that we have are the Chinese ceramics. And we have just a little bit of ceramics coming from the Tang Dynasty, but most of them, almost all of them comes from Southern Sui Dynasty. So we have the Celadon, we have Qingbai also, and also we have the Stowe. So wherever you excavate, wherever you go, you are going to find this ceramic, except for Bukit Choras. I haven't found a single piece. Okay, so if you go to you go to supermarkets, I'll find thousands of Chinese ceramics. And we also have Persian and Arab, we call it the glazed pottery. Okay, and they are dated from the 9th to the 13th century CE. We also have Indian pottery, Persian glasses. Okay, so it's a key and economically diverse area. Chinese ceramics, Arab pottery, Indian pottery, and Persian glasses. A mixture of everything. And if you put Penggalang side, when you excavate it, you can see the Chinese ceramic and the Arab ceramic all mixed together. Okay, and sometimes when you go to the Buddhist temple, you will find Arab glass over there. Okay, sometimes we go to a Buddhist site, underneath the site, in the reliquary, they will bury the adhesive point. So it is a mixture of all types of materials. And then we also discovered lots of glass beads, and they are not imported, they are all locally made. So the raw material used to make the beads, they are actually the Arab glass they recycled. They recycled their broken Arab glass and they use Southern Indian technology from Arika Medu. Okay, so they have local industry, local bead making industry, they recycle Arab glass and using Indian technology. Right? And we also have iron smelting sites. So this is one of the most important discovery in the year 2008-2009, where we discovered massive complex of iron smelting workshop, which can be dated from 4th, 5th century CE until 13th century CE. And importantly, they use the blue method or direct firing method, which comes from India also. So with what we can see from the archaeological findings is, first, the location of archaeological sites, they are located all near to the coastal areas. Okay, we have around 50 different sites, and they are all concentrated in the coastal area, but when you go to the interior, to the upper reaches, to the middle river, not a single hint for this info. Not a single one. Only in the coastal area, only concentrated near to the ancient coastline. Okay, when we go outside, maybe to sit, party, protesta, not a single temple, nothing. Okay, so that is the location of archaeological site. The types of archaeological finding extremely diverse. We have Hindu sites and Buddhist sites. Different Hindu sites show different forms of cultural features. Different Buddhist sites also different forms of cultural features. We also have foreign ceramics, beads, ornaments, iron smelting sites, a mixture of everything. It shows the form of cultural complexity, the economic diversity that we have mentioned. And the morphology of this form, as I mentioned before, there's no such thing as Kedah. It appears that different sites were constructed with different groups of people. Some statues were brought in from outside, some were locally made. Those which were locally made, they are roughly made. It appears to have been made by non-experts and people still to be on a budget when they constructed the temple. The temples are very small. They can be constructed within 6 months, most of them. And that is not surprising at all, because traders have to stay in Bujang Valley in the period of 6 months while waiting for a change. And that gives us some insight regarding the pattern of settlement and the cultural profile of society in ancient. Okay, so these are the kind of findings that we have before the excavation of Bukit Choras archaeological site. What is the problem with the findings? They are not excavated using a proper method. Before the year, I think before the 70s, in the process of excavation, they did not study the stratigraphy. The soil layers has not been properly studied. The location of the artifacts had not been properly documented. For instance, they discovered a statue. They didn't say the location of the statue. The statue was discovered alongside with other materials. They have not been properly documented. Because of that, we are not able to interpret the relation between the artifact and the temple. We are not able to tell whether or not the artifacts were taken from outside or were originally there. So that's why context is very important in archaeological research. So for the past research, especially before the 1970s, context is not important. When we discovered the Bukit Choras archaeological site, we got the second chance. Okay, we have discovered a well-preserved archaeological site, pioneer and untouched archaeological site, and we are able to conduct a proper scientific excavation following correct methodological approach in order to extract as much information as possible from that site, so that we can have a more holistic view regarding the history of Kedah, regarding the cultural profile, regarding the chronology, regarding the interconnectivity, the cultural influences we have in that area based on the discovery of this simple undisturbed archaeological site. Now, how do we decide, which site to study? Okay, somewhere in 2017 or 2016, the University of Cambridge, what they did, they digitized many Buddhist texts. Okay, and one of the texts is this one. We call it the Ashta Sahasrita Prajna Paramita Sutra. Okay, it's a Balinese text. And at the end of each text, they are going to have some definition, usually consisting of some bodhisattva image. And underneath the bodhisattva image, they would have a caption. And I am interested in one particular caption, Kapahadite, Balabati Parvati Lokanta, which can be translated as the god Lokanta living on top of the mountains of the islands of Kedah. So it appears that we can expect lots of important Buddhist sites located on top of hills hills and mountains. Okay, and for the case of Bujang Valley, there are several sites where we know located of hills. For instance, the Bukit Meriam site, Bukit Penjara, Bukit Choras, Bukit Putri. So on top of the hill, they could be the site, and we have chosen to conduct an excavation in the Bukit Choras site. So this is the site of Bukit Choras, the drone image, and the site is located over here on top, at the southern top. And this is the drone image of that area prior to excavation. It did not look very effective. So before excavation, this is what you see. So just it looks like a pile of rubble. If you ask me, no, it does not look very potential. I had a master student working on site. I told my student that you are lucky to be graduate with this site. You know, I hope that there is something. You know, I'm not going to my hopes too high, and I said, oh, I'm not very keen. We are in the big problem. It's not, but we are really good. We got the funding, so we have no choice, but you know, just to excavate. Now, so there were actually two mounds. We have the main structure over here, and we have the one more temple over here. So we decided to focus on the main structure. So this is how we started our work under rain, yeah, where the rain or shine, we have work. Now, so we did a survey, and even the head of project have to do this kind of work now. So we are at egalitarian society when we run this kind, so everyone has to say work. Yeah? Now, when we first excavated the site, first 10 centimeters, we did not discover anything, just rubble. And we thought that is the end of the project already, because we just discovered broken reefs, looking like our rubble. So I said, okay, we are going to start our excavation. This is what we have. And then my student told me to this type of it and move the rubble. I thought that the rubble was actually a structure. Okay, I thought the rubble was a structure, so we are not supposed to move it. After having some discussion, we decided to move, move some part of the rubble. And after we moved the rubble, we finally discovered the plate of the structure, the basement of the Buddhist stupa. And as we went further, we discovered a well-preserved squarish plate of the stupa. It appears to be a cruciform stupa with a panchalata plan. I'm going to show you later the architecture. It has projected linear niches and clear stratigraphy. So it is one of the best preserved Buddhist sites in Bhutan. Other Buddhist sites, but many of them, they are not in a very good state of preservation. They are stuck in those which are in a good state of preservation, very simple architecture, but this one is different. So this is the south. This is the southern view of the temple, and during the first phase, of our excavation, we discovered two statues in the southern ridge and in the western part. Okay, this from the northern view. Okay, so this is September last year. And this is where we discovered the third statue. Okay, so this is the image, and this is the third statue from art. And this is the image after. This is June 2024. Okay. And this part had not been excavated, the eastern wall. So for each wall, there will be one statue. Okay. We have one statue over here, one statue over here, and one statue over here. Usually in the eastern wall, we put the previous one. This one, not that excavated. So I'm keeping it for next time. Huh? So what important is the site shows Panchalata plan. This one has the similar kind of plan as compared to Borobudur. And in terms of the dating also is almost the same, a bit earlier by 1 century. So it appears to be a miniature of Borobudur in terms of the plan. Okay, and then when we compare the architecture, it shows similarity with the stuff discovered in Nagiri in Udaigiri in the state of Odisha, India, east of India. And that's not surprising at all because the state of Odisha is just across the Bay of Bengal from Kedah. So we also discovered three these images, and they were found inside the projected cardinal niches, and they are stucco images in Vienna position, the meditating position. And these are the first among the first images discovered in Turkey made using a material known as stucco. It's a mixture of lime, sand, gravel, and broken pottery. So it is an ancient cement. So we have never ever discovered stucco statues in the world. This is the first. We discovered two incomplete statues and one complete statue. So this is statue number one. Okay, discovered at the southern part of the temple. Okay, and next to the statue, there is this motif temple. Okay, it is a carving of a stone carved in the edge of a stupa. Around the statue, we found traces of broken pottery, and near to the left of the statue, one specific picture. It is as if the statue was simply left undisturbed. Okay, and you can see the motif tablet was simply left there, so undisturbed. It is in context, it's untouched. So we are able to translate, interpret the form of ritual that they had in those days. When we discover pottery, those could have been offerings. The inscription, by translating the inscription, we know the type of religious sect that they have, what kind of worship they have. So this is very important because we have an undisturbed site. At the western wall, the statue is not in a very good condition. Only half of it, and you don't find any artifacts with the statue. But in the northern wall, we discovered a complete statue. Okay, initially, when we first excavated, we couldn't see the head, which through the process. Okay, this is when we first excavated, and we see the head here. It falls to the front. It fell to the front. And this is when we realized that this is actually the head of the statue. We thought that it was just a broken piece of stucco. We could see the hair here. Okay. And then, okay, this is the statue, the shoulder, the drapery. So the head fell. Okay. And as we went down, we took out the head. Okay, you can see the sitting position. The head is in meditative position. Okay. You can see the Padmasana, the lotus throne. Okay, the lotus throne over here. Okay, and you can see over here the drapery. Okay. And we restored back the head to the body. So this is our biggest finding. Before this, we did discover statues, but the statues was discovered not through a proper excavation. And alongside with this statue, we discovered another Sanskrit inscription. Usually, for a lucky archaeologist, if you are lucky enough to discover a temple, then if you're lucky, you will find one inscription. Or if you're very lucky, then you will find one statue. But from the Bukit Choras project, we excavated 30% only of the site, and we discovered 3 statues, 2 inscriptions. Imagine what else we have at the site. Okay. So after that, we took back the statue, put it into a conservation lab in USM. We restore it. Okay. And right now we are in the process of conserving the statue, and we are going to use metal frame to hold them together, and after we are done with it, then maybe it is going to be displayed in the museum. We are also going to make and place them back in the structure. Now, we also have other small finds. This is the inscription from the southern wall. And this is another inscription from the northern wall, all located near to the statue. They are written in the Brahmi script, and they contain a special Buddhist text known as the Sattva. So it is a text for the Madhyamika sect, Mahayana Buddhism. And 3 more inscriptions has the same concept that we discovered in other parts. So it appeared to be a local tradition. The Bujang Valley use this text. So this is the water tablet pottery, and we discovered this conical iron object. We are not sure what is it for until now. Still a mystery, so we need to study further on this. Now, let's go to the narratives. Okay, this is the text that we have just translated from Sanskrit. It comes from this word we know as the Prihat Kata Manjari. Okay, and it is originally in Sanskrit, but we have translated. Thereafter, we went on auspicious day to the edge of Ocean with its companions, and after arriving at Katahadipa, they stayed to trade abundant number of goods. There are at least 18 Indian texts mentioning about Kedah and refer Kedah as a kingdom. All of them. Okay? And they were putting lots of emphasis on how rich the port was, and it becomes part of the Indian, how they say, Indian view towards the Eastern world. They would sometimes would view the whole Southeast Asia as a Kedah. So they used Qatar sometimes as an imaginary place in the East, as a rich imaginary place. Now, the new approach that USM is offering is number one, the nuanced archaeological dating chronology. Before this, when we discover a single radiocarbon system, then we are already going to decide the dating of archaeological sites. But for USM, we're doing differently right now. We usually don't depend too much on scientific samples, but we would usually contextualize samples with other aspects. For instance, we go to a site, we will try to extract 1 or 2 radiocarbon samples, and after that, we are going to conduct dating on other material. So we are going to look at the validity, we are going to look at the architecture, and then we are going to determine the dating of that particular site. But that does not necessarily mean Bujang Valley has the same dating that site. We can look at other datings, put them together, and put it original model. So we call it the nuanced archaeological dating. So we are not easily satisfied with this samples. We use other methods of dating too. We also conduct contextual analysis on artifacts and structures. So we are not too dependent on archaeological findings to explain the cultural features of Bujang Valley. For instance, when I conduct an archaeological digging and I suddenly discovered a Buddhist statue, we cannot jump into conclusion that that statue belongs to the Buddhists. We need to do contextual analysis. What kind of archaeological sites that we have surrounding the area? For instance, we have this big statue of Buddha in Kelantan. Does that mean the people in Kelantan are all Buddhists? Not necessarily. The same thing. So we need to look at the context of the findings. For instance, in a trading center, we discovered a Buddha statue. Then we need to assess whether or not the Buddha statue shows local influence. If it's local influence, then who are local people who make the statues? So we are going to study the public environment of the area, the connection, the connectivity of the area with the outside world before we can be able to decide whether or not the statue was local or foreign. And also we use interdisciplinary collaboration. It is not just archaeology, but we collaborate with geologists, we collaborate with technologists, we collaborate with those who study the paleoclimate. So we try to integrate different archaeological methods to get a holistic view regarding the history of Kedah. And most importantly, critical assessment on traditional narratives. For many decades, people have been describing ancient Kedah as a Hindu-Buddhist kingdom. What is a kingdom? How do we define a kingdom? We need to be clear about that first. Define a kingdom, and does the archaeological findings in the Bujang Valley fulfills that definition? People call ancient Kedah a civilization. How do we define a civilization? And we need to go back to the archaeological finding, and to the archaeological findings in Bujang fulfills that definition of civilization. So we need to, we need to using all those jargons, all those big words, and we need to describe Kedah as it is based on the facts that we have. You know, the term Indianization, how do we define Indianization? What are the characters of that society, and does the society of ancient Kedah fulfills that definition? So we need to challenge, we need to reassess the traditional narratives of ancient Kedah. Okay, so this book gives some insight, you know, some early views on how we view ancient Kedah right now. Now, so we have three main narratives that we are focusing. Okay, number one is the position of ancient Kedah as maritime polity. What is the political structure of ancient Kedah? Is it a kingdom or is it a kingdom? What is? Number two, the new environment, pattern of settlement, and the culture of the people of ancient Kedah. Okay, people like to have this over simplistic view on the society of Kedah. They are either Indianized or they are not Indianized. But things are more complicated than that. Because the process of Indianization, or in that case, the process of social acculturation, is not a linear process. It is a very complicated process, and we need to address that. I used to believe that the people of ancient Kedah was not Indianized at all, but I changed my opinion after that. So we are going to discuss this later. And we also would like to view the economic aspect of ancient Kedah in terms of trade and industry. Okay? And let us have a look at the position of ancient Kedah as property. Number one, we no longer view ancient Kedah as a centralized kingdom, but it was in fact network coastal polities. Okay, so we look at the fact we based on the distributions of archaeological sites at the west coast of Malay Peninsula. We have several clusters of archaeological sites, which are Krabi, Terang, Satun, Perlis, Bujang Valley, and Folas Fencing. So each cluster of those sites represented one coastal settlement with specific economic function, and they could have been autonomous. So ancient Kedah should be viewed as a network of coastal polities, a loose network of coastal polities. Each polities they could have been autonomous, but they competitive when it comes to trading activities. And Bujang Valley, I believe, was the economic sector of ancient Kedah after the 6th, 7th century CE. Okay, and it emerged in the 6th, 7th century CE. So we can see the site of Krabi, we discovered lots of beads, steel ingots, Roman coins from the period of Antoninus Pius, Roman intaglio, Han period coins, and Kushan coins dated from the 2nd to the 4th century CE. So I believe that maybe before the 6th century CE, the economic center of Kedah was not located in Bujang Valley, but somewhere near Trang, based on the discovery of the Roman coins. In order for me to convince ancient Kedah, the economic center of ancient Kedah was located in the Bujang Valley, I need to discover a Roman coin. So until now, I haven't seen a single Roman coin yet. Radio carbon sample is not enough for us to confirm the existence of Bujang Valley in the 2nd century CE. We tangible proof like Roman coins. Now, we also have another coastal community in front where we discovered beads, votive tablets, small stupas, ornaments, and smaller temples. We also have sites in Satun, in Perlis. We discovered lots of votive tablets in Perlis. In Kuala Selassie, also we discovered some Roman seals, Indian seals, and but the most important site is the Bujang Valley. We believe that it is an economic center from the 6th century onward, based on the discovery sheer number of archaeological sites, which is 184 sites compared to other places. Most of the archaeological sites are dated from the 6th to the 13th century CE, and most of them are concentrated to the south of Bujang. Why they were concentrated to the south of Bujang is because of this. We see that before 14th century CE, ancient Kedah was actually a large bay. You can see the yellow outline, it was the location of the ancient coastlines. And you look at the location of archaeological sites marked by the red dots. They are all located on ancient coastline. And how do we know that ancient Kedah? We did something. We did something looking at the sediment, and this is what we got. So ancient Kedah was a large bay. Bukit Choras was a promontory, a tanjung, and we have several islands protecting the bay. That's why Kedah was called the islands of Kedah, and we can see the islands here. Okay, that's why the main marker for me to interpret the history of Kedah is two: the economy and the environment. Put so much stress studying the environment of Kedah in order for us to interpret population history. Okay, so we see that this is the site of Kampung Sungai Mas, Kampung Pengkalan Bujang, Sungai Batu. The trading center, the place where they do the exchange of goods, is located here. This is Bengkalan Bujang, where we discovered thousands of Chinese and Persian ceramics, Indian ceramics also. And this is Kampung Sungai Mas, also a port center, and Sungai Batu, the smelting site. And the iron deposit is here. It's just the environment. Okay, they have this good environment for the development of a nation port. So why Asia Kedah was important? Because of this. Because it was located at the entrance of the Strait of Malacca. It was a large protected bay. They had abundant of fresh water, and they have the Muda River. Muda River is very long. It connects the coastal area with the interior of the Thai Bali Peninsula, which was very rich in what? Rainforest products. And be able to transport all the products, the coastal area to be traded off. So it is the environment and and then this is where we have the Buddhist site on top of a hill, on top of a hill, on top of a hill. So we need to look at the ancient environment. And now let us have a look at the pattern of settlements of ancient Kedah. Okay, we reconstructed the Paleo environments. Ancient Kedah should look something like this. Okay, it was a large bay surrounded by islands. And why Pengkalan Bujang became the center for trade? Because there was a sandwich. Okay, so the sandy beach provide very stable ground for the development of the port. That's the beach over here. So it is due to implemental factors. The pattern of settlement, it appears that within the Bujang Valley, there were three main centers of population, and each center of population would have their own specific economic function. First, we start with Kampung Sungai Mas. Okay, we see at the estuary of the Muda River, okay, the coastline should be here. We discovered three types of archaeological site. Number one, exchange site, where we discovered lots of Chinese, Indian, Arab ceramics all mixed together. Number two, we discovered big making workshops. Number three, we also discovered lots of temples. And then we believe that this was also the place for the collection and distribution of rainforest products based on the presence of the Muda River. And then when we go to the upper reaches of the Muda River, until the middle reaches, we have the relief sites. Okay, so we have the Buddha settlement where it of the economic spillover due to the rise of trade and the political changes in China and India. When did ancient Kedah first emerge? Somewhere in the second shift. But the peak for development of ancient Kedah happened somewhere in the 11th century CE with the rise of the Southern Sung dynasty. What happened? During the Southern Sung dynasty, the Chinese were cut off from the overland route, and they had to use the maritime route. And because of that, we discovered 70 to 80% of the ceramics that we discovered in Bujang Valley consisted of Southern Sung ceramics. So the peak of development of ancient Kedah was due to economic spillover from China. At the same time, we saw the emergence of industry with technology from India. Okay, we have big making industry using the Archaeological technology. Iron smelting site, the blue Mary method, also Indian technology. So it appears that in ancient Kedah, we have Chinese capital and Indian technology. Okay, it is the place where everyone went there to make money, and regardless of their political actions. And despite of the abundance of Chinese ceramics, we have not found a single dynastic annals in China mentioning about Kedah. So it could have been private bankers in Kedah when it comes to Chinese. And the Indians also, they didn't have so much sources, official sources, except for the Cholas. Okay, before the Cholas and after the Cholas, they didn't mention much. Also, it could have been private ventures also. Yeah, and at the same time, we have the local agency. Okay, so we have the Chinese capital, we have the Indian technology, and we have the local people who took advantage and go over them. And they make money. So I think that the emergence, development of ancient Kedah was due to multiculturalism, was due to the openness of the people in ancient Kedah who took advantage of the foreign powers. Now, when it comes to the material culture, art, and religion, the people of ancient Kedah, they were not a homogeneous society. Okay, the previous hypothesis, the colonization hypothesis, the indigenization hypothesis, the local authority hypothesis were assuming that the people in ancient Kedah were all the same. But that is not the case. As I mentioned earlier, the people in ancient Kedah, they consisted of several coastal settlements. And the process of Indianization was not uneven. Different communities would have different level of acceptance towards Indian culture. And that would depend on the social status, the economy, the demography, and the location, how far they are from the economic centers. So we can obtain ancient Kedah with the same color. Different communities would have different level of acceptance towards culture. Some temples were built by the locals, some temples were built by the trader, some temples were built through the collaboration of locals and traders. It is a very complicated area. Okay, so we should not oversimplify the history. So I used to oversimplify the history, but as we get new data, we can be able to change our view. When it comes to economy, the economy of ancient Kedah was extremely diverse. They conducted international trade. They had making industry, iron smelting industry, pottery making industry, and they also exploited on the natural resources. So it was a diverse economy. And when it comes to the politics, there was a continuous conflict and diplomacy between the southern Indian kingdoms, especially the Chola, between the 10th to the 11th century CE. So we have several inscriptions. I'm going to discuss that on the 19th of April for the Indian embassy regarding the conflict and diplomacy of Kedah with southern India. But we have to say that despite of the problems with India, with the Cholas, the fluctuation trade policy of China, ancient Kedah managed to appear due to its geostrategic position, the resilience of the people. And the most important thing, we need to view the people of ancient Kedah not as a homogeneous society, not just as a society which doesn't change, but they should be seen as groups of people who become active agents for the transmission of ideas and cultures. So ancient Kedah is a place where there was continuous movements of people, groups, and ideas, which makes the history very complicated. And how did ancient Kedah end? Trade in ancient Kedah started to decline in the mid-13th century, and it was due not to war, economic problems, but due to environmental factors. We know that in the first half of the 14th century CE, we had the Little Ice Age. And Little Ice Age had caused the sea level to go down. And as a result, the area which used to be a large bay started to seal up and it swam and ships were not able to access. As a result, we have a special text in the Archaeological Samasulah Negeri Kedah, which mentioned that the king of Kedah in the year 1371 shifted his capital from Kota Sungai Mas in Bujang Valley towards the north in Kota Putih. So we can see that in the 14th century CE, what happened? The economic shifted from maritime trade to white rice cultivation. As a maritime kingdom, as a maritime polity, they existed as loose confederation of coastal polities due to the economic substructure of that polity. However, when the kingdom started to evolve to become an agrarian society, their whole overland became very important. And that led to the formation of a more institutionalized form of government, which led to the formation of the Sultanate of Kedah. So we see that how environmental change led to the economic transformation, which further led to the political change in Kedah. And 20 years after the fall of Kedah, we saw the rise of the Sultanate of Kedah, where it shifted the economic center, the center for trade from the north to the south. That's why I say that if I am going to summarize the research of Kedah with 3 words. Number 1, interconnectivity. Kedah was interconnected with other economic and cultural hubs in the region, India, China, and other parts of South Asia, as evident from the archaeological findings that we have in the region. Number 2, multiculturalism. We have Indians, Chinese, Arabs, Persian, as well as the local people. And number 3, continuity. After the decline of ancient Kedah, we saw the rise of the Sultanate of Kedah, which continues until today. So 3 words, and that is very powerful. But this book is just a preliminary study. Research is still ongoing, and we hope that we can be able. We are still working on something new, but it will take some time for us because we have just excavated 30% of the archaeological sites in Bukit Choras. We have discovered new archaeological sites, so it is going to take some time for us to complete the work. But from time to time, we are going to keep on publishing, and we hope that we can be able to continue this kind of public engagement programs so that we can communicate our research institutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nasha, for an interesting ancient international trades at ancient Kedah. Now I would like to open the floor for Q.
Hi, thank you, Prof. Wonderful lecture. I really liked it, and I like the way you draw conclusions from the findings and so on. For a site like that, I assume you don't expect to find any gold. So probably that's not mentioned that you would have mentioned. That's my short question, really. And to thank you for this wonderful talking.
Okay, we don't expect to find any bones in the Bujang Valley because the soil there is very deep, and any calcium-based material cannot last more than 200 years. And also, with our archaeological finding, we believe that coastal communities they would dispose of the dead by drifting them away into the sea. And as for the Indian traders, we could have just limited the remains. So we don't expect to find any bones in the Bujang Valley.
Hi, first of all, thanks so much for your first of all, thanks so much for the talk today and your devotion, something that's been so important in the foundation. I'm a complete ignoramus on this, so I'm aware resources is important, but have you considered imagining to raise awareness and also to preserve the archaeology? Have you considered a satellite archaeology to map out the extent of the different colonies.
Okay. Yes, we are planning to conduct a LiDAR survey first in my site in the upcoming after we have completed the excavation. As for satellite technology, no, we have not yet have to do that. We are going to conduct the LiDAR survey first. And we are just going to cover a small area. Because whole of Bujang Valley, it is quite a large area, more than 1,000 square miles, and it's going to take some time and quite an amount of funding to conduct that kind of research. So our focus now is to excavate the site, to expose the remains, and when we have some extra funding, then we move to the satellite survey on those archaeological sites.
Dr. Naja, a question here in the back. You mentioned that the excavations are only coastal area, and that you haven't found any archaeological remains further inland. And I'm wondering about the original inhabitants of that coastal area who are doing all of this trading. And is there any speculation about who these people were and what their relationship would have been to human communities who were further inland? Were they the same people just living in different locations, or were these two different ethnic groups speaking different languages with different cultures?
Thank you. Okay, in the upper reaches of the Buddha River, we did not discover any religious sites, but we discovered other type of sites. We discovered iron smelting sites in the upper reaches of the Buddha River. So, yes, there were activities in the upper reaches of the Buddha River, but they were not Hindus and Buddhists. So it appears that Hinduism and Buddhism were only concentrated in the coastal areas near to the economic centers. And as far as the ethnicity of the indigenous communities in Kedah, we don't know. Because in order for us to be sure, we need to discover inscriptions written in the local languages. Unfortunately, all of our inscriptions are written in Sanskrit language, and they are used for ritualistic purposes. Okay, so but based on our extrapolation, looking at the linguistic history of the area, it could have been a mix of Austronesian and Austro-Asiatic speakers. You know, the languages of Malay, the ancient languages of the Malays, and the Bukharian language. It's a mix of these both. But in order for us to confirm this, we need to discover inscription in local languages. But we had some clue already. During our excavation in Bukit Choras, we discovered a piece of pottery written in, there are only two characters on top of it. Okay, there was the character Ha and character Sa. Two of these characters shows 100% similarity with the Malay inscription discovered in Palembang, Sumatra. However, it is just two features. We continue our excavation in the next branch to look for more pieces of the broken pottery so that we can restore them and maybe make out some work from it. So we can cross our finger that we are able to discover a few more pieces of pottery with the script so that we can reconstruct. I hope that it is a local language. If not, then the ethnicity of the people of Kedah is going to remain a mystery.
So I just wanted to ask about the economy and politics bit. So you said that it was a sort of like a confederation of various ports. Do we know how they're related to? Was it a thing like Europe had a fiefdom and serfs, or was it more of a political network? For all those rope points and points from, do we know what they were buying? What was the main thing?
As far as the political system, ancient Kedah, it would understand the coastal societies, they are extremely mobile. You know, they can move their settlement quite quickly. And as far as when we speak about political arrangement, we can see that they have this network of loyalties which can rapidly shift from, you know, see that each of them they could have been autonomous. But they are not influenced by one another, and there is no central authority for most maritime polities in the Malay archipelago. And their form of collaboration are in terms of the overshooting the movement of goods and movement of people. So that's the main point of maritime policies actually. So they just control the movement of goods, okay, to make sure that they can be able to extract as much riches as possible from trade. So, in conclusion, there are autonomous coastal polities, and their collaboration are in terms of trade and to exploit the natural resources. That's it. And question? Well, we have discovered just half piece of coin in the Bukit Choras, and the coin was used as a relic deposit. You know, they bury underneath the little thing that they have in soft currency in the Bujang Valley. It could have been buttered paper. So it full, it's half a coin that we discovered. I don't believe that there was any form of currency. We discovered lots of pottery, lots of Chinese tradewares, and in some Chinese trade we discovered gold plates. So maybe they use this kind of precious method, you know. And the main piece of Kedah could have been, we have three types of commodities. One, the locally produced materials, like iron, beef, pottery, porous products. Number two, we have items which we brought in from outside. So Chinese ceramics, etc. And number three, maybe the other forms of natural resources, etc. So there are three main types of commodities. So we can see that the economic is really diverse. So that the economic strength of Kedah.
That was a brilliant lecture, brilliant journey. I wanted to just ask a few things. Penang Island appeared, all the time there, and seems to be like nothing was happening. I wanted to mention a bit about things that have been done in the upgrades. Second thing is about exports. One of the interesting things about this is when we talk about exports coming from outside, of the things that went to India, one of the great exports of Kedah, that area, is actually elephants. And lots of the elephants that are in southern India, in that area, is apparently of Indian descent, of Malayan descent. So that's something else that the ships came with spices, and the ship took back live elephants. That's also one of the things. Thank you.
Okay, for Penang Island, well, we see that Penang Island is located quite near from the estuary of the Merbuk River. There could have been some settlements here, with some, at least a trade outpost here. And I guess the location of the outpost, it could have been somewhere near Sungai Pinang. So I don't think that there is any point excavating Sungai Pinang right now under the current situation. But there's one thing that we can study. Maybe there are some potentials for us to study some the Julu River, the Muna River, and the Prai River. What we can do is to study the value environment of the area to see the location of ancient coastline. Maybe we could find Penang Island a bit difficult. Maybe you want to study the period and but looking at Sungai Pinang, I don't know if it's looking at the particular. Okay. And as for the export of Kedah, yes, maybe during the modern period, maybe after the 19th century, yeah, elephant could have been one among the commodities which were being exported. But for the period of ancient Kedah, they mentioned about rainforest products. We are not yet sure. We have not yet found any documents, but it could have been, it could have been, elephant could have been one of the many products, but we have not found any direct documents on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Such a big crowd. We show some difference in
This is part of the history of innovation. Is not so much discussed. And the rich influence of Indians and Chinese, they going back until the second century BC, which is quite unique. So, and particularly after for the Buddhists around 6th century, thing so my question is, what has to be that so much experience of all this Hindu and Buddhist influence areas? And then of course the transition from trading policy to the society like that, because of then basically the China kingdom and the Buddhists and the Hindu influence simply disappeared, and then Millennial history is only about America simply the industrialization. Huge change.
Thank you so much. Very good question. Huh? Okay, first of all, we can see that most of the Hindu and Buddhist sites that we have in ancient Kedah, in my opinion, they were built to cater to the traders, in my opinion. We have small number of archaeological sites which were built by the ruling, I call it the merchant aristocrats. So they were merchants, and at the same time they were ruling the coastal communities, and they were influenced by the Hindu and Buddhist religion. But after the decline of the long distance trade with China, what happened? The traders started to go back to their own traders, and the area was still abandoned, you know, and population shifted to the north. And at that time, by the mid 15th century CE, India started to be Islamized already, you know. And after the fall of ancient Kedah, before the rise of Malacca, there was another port which developed in the east cape of Sumatra, the port of Fasai. And the port of Fasai catered for the needs of Indian Muslim traders. So because of that, the Hindu and Buddhist influence in ancient Kedah simply, it simply declined with the decline of the international trade. So that's why we came to the conclusion that most of the chandis that we have in the Bujang Valley were built to cater for the need of traders and to cater for the need of the merchant aristocrats. And the class of merchant aristocrats also declined with the decline of ancient Kedah and the sector of trade. So it is all because of economy, you know. And with the shift of economy into wet rice cultivation and the rise of the Sultan institution, it led to the rise of Islam in Kedah in the mid 14th century CE. And we know that in the mid 14th century CE, other Islamic sultanate also started to appear in northern Asia. So this is a regional phenomenon. And also in other parts of Southeast Asia, also we saw the decline of Hindu and Buddhism because of economic factors.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive presentation, Prof. Mashaf. Digna Ryan, I have one curiosity about the weeks that I found in thinking back in the early 90s, visiting the Myanmar. Village shops were actually selling blue, black, and yellow beads. To claim that they also have a gold statue with the gun archaeological sites. So being beads, then of course part of the main trade material culture. Were you able to question? Were you able to cross-reference some of those records if you're able to come? And the second one is how does beads that were found and how big the production, any records of that?
Well, we can be able to compare things with those in Japan. Can get a sample.
I'll be happy to donate some.
But the thing is, we need to destroy it. We need to grind it. Yeah, we need to grind it and then put it into our air supply. And found the chemical and then we compare it. Okay, and the pit that discovered in Kampung Sungai by the millions, but in the 80s, discovered by the millions. But now it's already a couple of people like to take. But in those days, it was discovered by the billions. Big production. The location where they discovered it, they also discovered lots of broken errors from error markers. Because they use technology, but the flux they use to lock down the gravity without flood is sodium. In India, they use potassium, but in Kedah, they use sodium as opposed to. So we can see the kind of innovation of Indian technology. It was Indian technology, but local material. So it's that you want to see, that we want to, the kind of narrative that we want to develop. The emergence of Asian Kedah was due to the openness of the local people that were able to accept foreign ideas, foreign technology, which like today. But of course, there are still lots to do to study on the fields, If anyone can provide us with any material for us to try and conduct the scientific analysis and
But the rest of the bits you have to return to government.
Thank you, Dr. Nasha. I found. I want to ask a long, short question. Some years ago, we archaeological discoveries. Now, I'm not saying anything about any connections with Bukit Choras and Bujang Valley, Johor archaeologists. Can you give us some light on that?
are you talking about Polity?
I'm sorry, don't even know. Remember what the
Yeah. The Kota Kami, the temple. I think that is a hoax. It's not, and I will tell you why. Because in order for us to, in order for any society to build a large temple, you must have four things. Number one, you need to have a big population. Number two, you have enough food. You need to have the right material and you need to have the right political structure. For the upper reaches of the Johor River, it's located so far from the economic center, located so far from any population center, where the manpower is going to come from, build such magnificent. And there is no wet competition, there is no goods to sustain market. In order to see let us see Borobudur. So Borobudur is located in the Javanese plain. Have rich, they have a very fertile soil. They can be able to sustain more than one population. So they have enough to build structures. The same thing we have also in the have people plain, you be able to produce lots of rice and they can big population. In order for you to build any structure, you only want food population. So there is no enough population in the upper reaches of Johor River. It is a where the manpower is going to come from. It's orang Bunian. Okay, so it is impossible that you find in the interior of the Malay Peninsula. The best that you can get is Bujang Valley. Why? Because Bujang Valley is a coastal area. It has a flat plain and it is directly connected with India, which provide with source. So, we're looking for some pearls in the jungles of Malaysia because it is just possible, without the population. The bigger the population, the bigger the size. And you look at the size of the country, it's quite small. Why? Because it can sustain more than 50,000 people in there, and you see the size of the temple. And then you go to Java, 1 million population, and you can see the size of the temple. You go to Sumatra, the population is considerably bigger, but the temple is also bigger. So it depends on the number of population, and the number of population depends on the quality of the soil. So I will go look at the economy and environment in the main number for our interpretation in archaeology. Economy and environment.
Let me ask a contemporary questions that Buddhist community in Malaysia might be interested. What is the status of World Heritage Sites application? Are you involved?
Well, in order for us to it's Bujang Valley to become a world heritage site. We need to have the ODV, the outstanding medicinal value. And the OUV of Bujang Valley needs to be proven through a fruitful scientific research. And there are so many research questions regarding Bujang Valley which have not yet been answered due to the nature of the past archaeological research. Earlier, as I mentioned, it was not yet very scientific in the 1970s. Most of the Hippie temples or the Buddhist temples that we discovered was discovered before the 70s, and research, the archaeological research was not so academically robust yet. So we are in the process of conducting a first scientific research so that we can be able to prove the existence of ODV for Bujang Valley. And it is going to take, instead of sending a letter to UNESCO and asking them to give us the UNESCO will take time to prove the ODV. And the one of the way is number one, we need to determine the chronology first. We need to prove that Bujang Valley is special as compared to other sites in the world. Yeah? And I see that what is special about Bujang Valley is the economic diversity, the multiculturalism, the diverse form of artistic form. We need to prove that through our research. That's why we need to focus on scientific research with the right methodological approach. That should be the first one.
Everyone, let us take the last question.
Good afternoon. Your actually presentation is very interesting and as a squad. I just one question to ask instead of going to the question that very interesting this thing is that how accessible is rituals today? Because I think this how concerned are you about the evangelism of the place beyond archaeological
Okay, Bukit Choras is not yet open for the public because we have just excavated a small portion of the site. And I believe that many understand this because, there shouldn't be too many people in that area because the soil is not yet very stable. Okay, and we are not able to expose the site to the public because whenever we leave the site, we need to wrap the full structure with plastic canvas, 5-6 layers. Whenever water touches the site, this will be destroyed. And speaking of vandalism, it did happen in the Bukit Choras, but not intentionally, I'm sure. Why? Because I saw some people burning incense in the river. And that contaminated the site. It is very hard for me to take to cover people. So I'm sure that it is not intentional. But the best thing for the public to help us with our research is to leave the site and look now. Let us do our work. And after we are done with the excavation, we are going to conduct a proper heritage assessment. And then we are going to conduct proper assessment. We are going to build proper structures on top of the site. Then we are going to open it to the public. But for now, give it for our research. It is going to take 1 year, 2 years, But from time to time, we are going to update the public regarding our finding. Whenever there's a big finding, then we are going to have a press conference. After we have restored the statues, we are going to display on the structure. That as soon as we are done with the excavation, after we restore it, it is going to be open to the public. But not just the patient, just for one.
Thank you, Dr. Nasha, for an very interesting and also I feel comfort and peace with his histories of international trades in action. If you like a deeper comfort, please purchase one box on the left from USM publisher. Thank you for everyone for attending. Thanks.